Are you upstate, Naomi?
Yes, Chris, I am back home just for Yom Kippur. Happy New Year,
Oh
everybody.
yeah,
It
not
is
Yom
time
Kippur.
for a new recap, finale, deep dive, all the good stuff of Survivor New York Season 4 Veterans versus Contenders. Guys, joining me, as always, Chris Lord. How are you doing, our Lord and Savior?
I'm good. I'm so good. So happy to be here with this group, of course. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. First of all, joining us as our guest this episode, we have she is a spoiler alert contestant on season 5, but more importantly, an avid viewer and a friend of mine. We have Christen from everywhere, not all live reality games, but an icon, I would say. Christen, you have muted yourself, but Christen, how are you doing?
I am so excited to be on this podcast. I've watched a lot of the podcasts, and clearly I've watched a season, and I was such a big fan of the season. It surpassed my expectations, and so I'm excited to sort of get my opinion out there in a more public eye. So very excited.
Oh yes, I've been getting your opinions all season, and I can't wait for other people to hear them. And most importantly, the man of the hour. He is our third place player, but he's an icon in and of itself. It's Jack. Jack, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm doing pretty well. I got a water filter today. That was my big life update. It was one of those water
like
filtering
a Brita filter?
I'm not going to name the brand because I don't know if they're good enough yet. I don't want to promote them if they're not good. But I filled up a big thing of water for tonight.
Okay, there you go.
That's awesome.
You went to the well, you got yourself water, and now we're ready to talk Survivor. Well, Jack, I'm so excited you're here. And first of all, let's just get started talking about what brought you to Survivor New York. Now, you and I have been friends for several years, but what made you want to play something like this?
So I remember seeing the application. I think you were tweeting it. And there was the application for 4 was extended by a week, and it went up at the right time. I was home. I was I should do something different. And I saw extended 1 week Survivor New York. And I was yeah, I should do this. So I went and applied, and I was I've been watching Survivor since I was 6. So I've always loved it. And I was why not? Let's give it a shot. Let's see if it's any good.
Yes. And I was so excited because there's this weird intersection of people that I became friends with from something that is not Survivor related, but then also love Survivor. And then we've all just kind of reached the bridge.
Meshed into the middle.
Yeah. And it's you, me, Jared, Mark Levy, and we're all just hanging out being so guys, Survivor, huh? And it's really fun. And so I was really excited that you got to participate in that, Chris, that you wanted to cast Jack as much as I did. Chris, can you talk to me a little bit about why we cast Jack? I know why, but tell me.
I mean, I feel like Jack does have an archetype. Basically, he's the Survivor super fan, a little bit like the nerdy, from the outside shell. Maybe he's a little bit shy. I mean, you had told me you had met him and you kind of give me a little bit about his personality, which we had seen throughout this season. And I think that he fit the role in a specific. That role just wasn't fulfilled at that point, so he fit that role perfectly for what we wanted, especially in this sort of group that we had already casted to that point. Plus, he was from Virginia, so he was out of the state, which I thought was really exciting, just to get more people the opportunity to come to New York and experience my hometown and everything like that. So I was really excited for Jack. I think the most unfortunate part for Jack was his car ride up here.
Oh boy. I don't know, Kristen, if you've heard the story, but Jack, why don't you enlighten us on what the hell happened for you trying to get to Survivor New York?
Yeah, so I left my house at whatever time I did, because I think there was an arrival window that we got. And I kind of want to get there early. I'm not doing anything. I took Friday off of work, so I'm I'll drive up there. I'll get there. It's a 4-ish hour trip, so I'll get there right at the start of the window, and then I have to do nothing but kind of sit around in day 0 and get to kind of talk to people. So I'm going down the highway, and it's raining, and there's a bunch of traffic stopped at you go over a bridge and then into a tunnel, and I'm over the bridge and there's a long line into the tunnel. So I slow down, and the car behind me slows down, but they don't slow down enough, and I get hit in the back of my car, and then through the collision, collide into the car in front of me. It's like a 3-car incident. Entire nightmare driving situation, regardless of where you're going. So I got there. I think the first couple of people I texted was like my family, just to let them know that I was okay, and then Naomi, and then my insurance. So
the updates I was getting. Oh my god! Yes,
did
Christen.
Did he just arrive with like a beat up car or something, or did he get?
I got a rental.
Okay, I was like, I can't just imagine like being a player and seeing somebody like arrive in like a car that's like smoking and just like dents everywhere. Like that's gonna be a rental car then.
I was really impressed. Like I was just so honored that he would get into a car accident not too far from his house, get a rental car, and still come out. Like that to me is like total dedication, and like that's why I love Jack.
Yeah. And I was horrified, Jack, by the way, when I got that text, because I was like, oh my god, you never want anything to go wrong.
Right.
And actually, it's funny, for season 5, I had everybody text me how they were doing, because I was so paranoid about something like that happening again that I wanted everybody to update me at all times while they were traveling to the game, because I was so scared.
Share my location.
Right. I was like, yep, Everett. It's just mom mode intensified. But that was really funny because, Jack, you basically became the last person to show up at like 11 at night, right? Like it was really late.
Mm-hmm.
It was a late arrival because I went and got my rental, and that was a whole ordeal. And I'm just texting, like, I think probably like 8-ish was when I left Maryland, and then just zipped it on down all the way. But last person by a long shot. I think everyone had just done we want to show you the video.
I was just going to say, yeah, I had to show you on my phone because I didn't want you to come in the house. I have to watch it on the TV. But I that was like our first moment together, Jack. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to show Jack because everyone else got to see it, you know?
Yeah. That was quite the day. And so I was paranoid, Jack, that you were going to get voted out first, because I was like, he just didn't have the time to talk to everybody. So I'm curious for you, like, you know that you're going into a survivor situation, and you know that you haven't been with everybody else who's been talking. How was that for you? As also, this is your first game. This is the other thing that we don't talk about. This is your first time doing this. So it's like such an extra level of hell and social anxiety. How was that for you?
So I kind of got thrown into it a little bit. A little bit of a squeal going on. I got thrown into it a little bit, and there was a little bit of a vibe of looking around my tribe and just being like, I don't know if I'm the odd duck here, but like there's very good reason to be if I'm the first one here. So it was very much like, I gotta make this time count. I gotta talk to people. I don't want to be too big, overbearing personality and have them all have a reason to point me out because I'm the odd duck in multiple ways. So it was a little bit, how do I get into everyone's good graces in just this short amount of time, just sitting around a picnic table and talking.
Mm-hmm. Christen, have you, like, what would you do in that situation? I'm just curious, like, for you, like, if you are the last person to show up, how would that sort of manifest for you?
I think it would be so hard, but not necessarily because everybody's socialized, but I think it's super easy to psych yourself out when you are the last one left, because I think it's super easy to get into your own head, and once you're in your own head, you start to make more mistakes. I think I would try to just not get in my head and to project as much positivity and likableness as possible to my tribe, but honestly, I would be so scared if that was me, and the fact that you, Jack, were able to stay and also make the end despite the hurdle, like, I think that's a testament to your game, and so I think it's super cool that you were able to do that, and I can't imagine like how proud of yourself that you were when you were able to do that. So,
Jack, do you remember like how far after you had arrived that like you had went to bed? Because I feel like it must have not been so much later. Like maybe an hour or so, people probably were sleeping.
It was roughly like I had an hour of just kind of going around in a circle. What's everyone's name? What's everyone do? And people trying to guess what the theme of the season was. But it really was just like an hour of packing my bag and doing all the beginning stuff. And by the time that like I had finished and packed and people were getting into the tent and going to bed.
Yeah, it was because that game especially. We didn't do anything at night. We were just like, all right, we're going in the morning, so get ready to go. So Jack, let's talk about your tribe. So you ended up on a tribe with Kira, Sarah, Davy, Alejandro, and Emily F. How did you feel in this group? Because I think there were people that you could have got along with, like, Emily F. from Maryland, things like that. But then also, the theme is announced and you're sort of a contender. And I don't know that we've ever really talked to somebody who maybe personified this more as like the Survivor fan that's never done anything like this before. And I'm wondering what you kind of felt like being labeled as a contender.
So I was a little bit thrown back, I think is a good phrase for it. Because there was a little bit of, I'm in here. This is my first time doing. I've never done anything like this. Surely, like, people are going to be in that boat. And it was like, no, half of the people here are experienced and they know what they're doing. So there was a little bit of, this is going to be a little bit more involved than I thought it was going to be. It's not going to be as much time to start building my way up into running. People are knowing how to run here and are going to hit the ground and do it. And I definitely wanted to focus on playing with people at first who had not played before and figured if they're going to, if we're not going to know what to do, at least we're not going to know what to do together. We can insulate ourselves if we make any obvious mistakes.
So at the time, who did you think was your closest alliance member on the Pink Tribe at the start?
I think it would have probably been Davy. And I don't know if we had done anything or would have done anything had it gone further in a group of 6. But I really did feel kind of walking into it like, I want to work with Kira. I want to work with Davy.
Now, this, I think we just got to skip right to when you guys lose, because it's such a heartbreaker, but also like every tribe goes to tribal council once. It's like a great way to get the game started. But Jack, it was nearly you. And I have a couple questions, but I also kind of want to know, Christen, if you had any questions about this round. But like, did you know that it was that close to being you going home at the time, or was that a surprise when you watched the episode back?
No, that was me watching it back. I had gone into it and I had said, Kira and I had that conversation where it was both of us talking. I'm like, I think we should do. You're like, I'm going to make a decision, and the decision that I make is like a very not giving names conversation. And I went and I told people, like, Kira's not giving a name, it's me. And they're like, no, like, it's Kira. Like, the fact that she has like the archaeology background and couldn't dig up any pieces. I had no idea that there was as much going on in the backdrop. I thought it was like, it's a done deal. Everybody wants to keep me. It feels great. I love this. And that was a surprise to watch back.
Yeah, I actually have a question. So, obviously, you don't lose the first tribal council. You don't go to tribal council until like second or third. And so, because of your car accident and because you fell a little behind, did you start building those bonds and working really hard once you guys lost? Or did you work really hard to form those relationships and make sure that you were safe sort of before that?
So kind of leading into it, it was very much like, I want to be in the fabric of this tribe. Because that was very much how we were. Like, we never split up into groups until we absolutely had to, because we had to vote somebody out. We stayed all one cluster the whole time. And I wasn't going to be the first one to go and break that, feeling already like I'm a little bit on the outside. So it was really just, can I fit in with this group of people? So when it's time to find who doesn't fit in, it's not me.
Jack, I'm curious about your relationship with Emily F. Because throughout the season, I've seen you strategize and talk about Alejandro, Davy, Kira, and Sarah. But I think throughout the whole game, there really was no one-on-one conversation between you and Emily. I'm just curious, like, how did you feel about her, sort of implementing all her strategies from being a veteran onto your tribe during the challenges?
So I valued that as someone coming in to see, I've done this before, here's what to do, here's what I don't think you should do kind of things. But it was one of those like, yeah, absolutely, please tell me everything that I need to know, knowing that that isn't going to be a sustainable thing where I don't want to go and have that be the entire game of me following somebody giving me advice.
A lot of advice. And so, Jack, I think that, like, what's really interesting is after this vote, you sort of talk about, I remember there's a confessional where you're like, I feel really good. Kira was going to vote for me. Kira voted for me, and my tribe said, let's not do that. And so my question for you is, when does the relationship with Sarah start? Because this vote, Sarah's like ready to vote for you, and she doesn't. And then you guys are all surviving another round while the blue tribe goes to tribal council. But when did the relationship and kind of bond strategically with Sarah start forming?
It was at the swap when we started really connecting. And I think I said this in there, like, I kind of want to take out Sarah early on. And I still kind of felt like if we were to had to go again, that would have been the name I would have said, is let's get rid of Sarah. So when we get swapped together and it's just the two of us, there's this little bit of, oh, maybe we have to stick together.
Mm-hmm. And Christen, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on the swap. I feel like the pre-merge pretty obvious, especially this early stuff, but the swap is kind of a chaotic moment.
So I'm actually curious. So you said when you swapped, your first instinct was, oh, I have to work with Sarah. So was the vibe when you swapped from everybody that tribal lines were going to stay and that everybody was going to stick to their original tribe lines? Or was there ever like a sort of glimmer of hope that maybe tribal lines will start to blur a little bit?
I kind of felt like at the beginning it was going to be, okay, tribal lines, two groups team up against the third. And I wanted it to be orange and pinks on blue because that had been the narrative all the way leading into it. I had in the back of my head this idea of, but it never quite works like that. It always has there's always something to it where someone says, I know this is like the path that it seems like it's going down. Let's do something else. And to the extent of like, yeah, I wanted to work with Sarah because we were the two pinks. There was in the back of my head that entire swap. Sarah could jump and just say, you know what? Let's leave Jack. Let's just get rid of Jack. It's easy. I'll work with you. We'll make a solid deal and take this even further after this.
Did you ever think that the opposite, that if people were starting to, target Sarah, that you would have just been okay with it?
I probably would have been, honestly.
Well, it's so funny to me because we see Bennett approach Sarah and is like, hey, Sarah, you want to vote out Jack? And Sarah's like, what the fuck is going on here right now? And Jack, I'm curious what you think of that. But first, TJ says that he loves your beard.
Oh, thanks, TJ. Yeah, this was new for 2020 was the beard, and I liked it, so I stuck with it.
Yeah, so tell me about seeing this moment where Bennett basically approaches Sarah and says, hey, you want to vote out Jack? How was that for you?
I wasn't surprised. I knew that conversation was going to happen. Any form of conversation that you think is going to happen probably would. And I definitely felt like once we were sort of on the chopping block, there was a little bit more of this could happen. I know that they've probably entertained the idea of let's pull in Sarah and cut Jack. This is an aside. I think since TJ commented, I'm reminded of this. This was whatever the water challenge was.
Yeah.
The water fire puzzle one. We're like waiting for the water portion to be done so we can do the puzzle. And TJ looks over to me and says like mount something like we're good, like you and Sarah, like you're good with us. I remember that. And I also remember not quite getting it immediately in the moment because I was like paying attention and trying to like focus on, okay, so like how am I going to do this puzzle? And this sort of like, so I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So a little aside of strategizing on the side as we were.
Well, I have to say, Jack, I think underreported, you are the puzzle master of this season. Like, I don't think it gets witnessed enough. Obviously, you win the Final Four puzzle, but you also win these two swap puzzles with your tribe. You're not on the puzzle for the first challenge, but like you really pull out, I think, the most clutch puzzle wins of this whole season. And like underreported fact about you, I feel like you and Billy, a great puzzle team. Like I would put you guys in like the Amazing Race or something.
It was so good. That was a really good like win, and I felt like we just caught each other's puzzling senses and just went in and crushed that one.
And so I'm curious, Jack, who you maybe didn't end up with on the pink tribe or the swap tribe that you wanted to work with? Was there anybody that you were like, oh, this person looked like somebody I wanted to play with and I haven't gotten to see them yet, like a Dresden or Liska or even, Marilyn or Sam? Was there anyone that you were sort of interested in working with?
I definitely wanted to work with Dresden going into it. And it's funny, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit as I talk about who gets put on the Misfit tribe. But really, the people on that Misfit tribe were people I wanted to work with and talk to that I felt like on night 0 in our limited interaction, we at least had a little bit of camaraderie forming.
The Misfit tribe, the fuck off tribe. So many. I kind of wish I had like labeled it instead of a New Muncie as like the F off tribe, but like I guess kids maybe watch this show. But Christen, when you think of like this swap, what comes to mind for you? What do you want to know about this swap situation? Because it is really interesting, and we'll talk about the Matt vote in a second. But like, what's on your mind?
I think I just wanted to know what types of players were you targeting at that point, and I guess were you considering relationships on the other tribe when you were targeting these people, or like what? I just want to know like what factors you were considering before the Matt vote comes up, because I think everything sort of changes for you once the Matt vote happens. But I'm curious to hear what you thought.
It was very much in the very shallow, were you on the blue tribe going into this? And then from there, I think I told people like, I don't want to keep people who are threats in the game because they are threats and they will protect me from being in the game. I would like to take out people who need to go, so that way they are out and I am still in. Because I know that any sort of thing that feels like, let's get rid of weaker people, let's keep meat shields, I'm never going to be anybody's meat shield. So getting rid of those people already, that was sort of where I wanted to go in with this. And then, coming back in, strengthening, the dream is always you get back in with your original tribe after a swap and you're all still there and you run it to the end.
I think, honestly, that's a good strategy because we do see, obviously, the pink tribe is very pink power. Also, Kai says...
Hey, Kai.
And Kai, you showed up just in time to talk about the Matt vote, your favorite subject.
Before we get into the Matt vote, like
Please.
Before in that challenge, I love that Jack and Dresden face off, and then Jack's like trying to start a conversation with Dresden because I don't know if there's any like awkward tension going on, and then that's when Dresden pulls his like famous move. But I just love that you tried to like start that with the conversation, Jack, because no one else thought that, and it was just kind of like a cute moment. It was kind of funny between you guys.
But then any interaction you can talk to people, and then I lost. And then we lost the rest of them, didn't we? Like that started a chain.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so. I believe that was like the one that then every other one was a loss.
Straw. That was the first tumble of the weed. First weed of the tumble?
I actually have no idea. Well, that challenge is so funny because it's like the Matt sits out for whatever reason, which I don't know why Matt sat out in particular, but I always find the matchups of that challenge very funny, and you and Dresden in particular is a hilarious sort of matchup where like everybody was very evenly balanced. Like I think Sarah and Paddock go against each other, and like Andrea and Kai, like all these very interesting pairings. But the Matt vote, I think, just because you go to tribal, first of all, Jack, but when you're getting to spend all this time with this tribe because you're not losing, what is going through your head? Like, are you talking with Sarah privately at all, or are you're just all looking at each other like, well, one day we're going to vote someone out?
It was a little bit of, well, one day we're all going to vote somebody out, and talking to people a little bit. There was a little bit more of let's talk in smaller groups, but it still was very let's all talk as one big happy family and talk about how much we all like each other and how we want to run this and go to the end. A little bit here and there of smaller groups talking. But kind of into that, it was that little bit of... Because we went on a little bit of a run, too. We won like 2 in a row. So we were like, we're feeling good. We're back at camp. We're enjoying each other's company a little bit. There was that bit of once we have to go and do something, like it's going to move faster than the last one because the numbers are a little bit more interesting than just 6 people put at a table together.
Right. Christen, you messaged me about the Matt vote, and I was like, I don't even want to engage because I want I want to save it for the pod, so let's talk about it. Christen, what do you think about not only voting out Matt, but then also like the move in regards to Jack's game? Because I would say great move for Jack and Sarah. Objectively, you guys don't go home.
Right.
Yeah, so I really thought that in the moment Blue would see that it's probably best to keep their fellow Blue person there, because I know Matt was a number for people like Bennett and Kai. And I was like really confused on why they flipped on him in the moment and how you were able to do it. And so I think I'm curious from you, Jack, like how did that round play from your perspective? Because obviously, you know, edits throw things off. That it was a very, very, very messy round just as a viewer. So there's a sign outside, I'm sorry. So
Okay.
I'm wondering, what did that round look like from your perspective? Because I need to see this round from a viewer or from a player's perspective as opposed to an edited series.
It was a messy round. It was as messy to play it as it was to watch it. It felt very much like I would go and talk to people, and Sarah and I would go and talk, and we'd say, all right, let's target one of these. And then I would go and talk with Matt, and Matt and I had a really good conversation, where towards the end of it, the conversation was to the tune of, like, we need to work together, like, long term, and we were having a good sort of rapport back and forth and talking. And he was like, I want to work with you. I want to figure something out. Let's pull Sarah in and let's do something different and get out someone else. I don't even remember which names were being said. It was just such a blur. And then I started hearing like Matt was saying a bunch of other names to where it was to the point of like Matt is trying to say everybody's name to every person. And it felt like a lot of what was the chaos was driven around Matt running around and talking. And I don't know if that didn't seem like what happened quite when I watched it back, but that's sort of what it felt, is Matt ran around and built up a bunch of different ideas, and whichever way the chips fell, as long as they weren't his chips, he could go and build back up something that he could work with, and everyone kind of caught wind to it and said, all right.
And
Yeah.
did you sense that you were in danger that round? And did you sort of like harp on the fact that Matt was going all over the place to sort of preserve yourself? Or did you think that your name was like off the table? Like, what did you think about your longevity at that point?
Oh, I was petrified that it was going to be me that entire round. The entire time. Like, part of it is like, you'll see that like Sarah and I are bundled up a little bit. I wanted to minimize the amount of time that Sarah could go and try to say my name or have my name said. Because I really thought like that's a rift that could be formed.
Jack, from my perspective, I felt like if Matt had to pick someone outside of Kai and Bennett as his closest ally, it was you. It seemed like he wanted to protect you the most outside of the Blues. So in that moment, did you feel like Matt was somebody that really had your back? Or did you not really feel that energy coming from him?
I felt like he could have my back when we were talking to each other and we were getting past the, all right, we have to say a name, what's the name, and getting into just like a little bit of smaller talk. I really did feel like had Matt stayed, Matt and I would have probably strengthened some bonds a little bit and done something with there. But it became such a, but Matt is saying everybody's name. And I heard he was saying Sarah's, he was saying mine. And it was like, as much as I'd like to, as much as I know that part of this is just conjecture and people saying what they want, because you can say whatever you want and people will in part believe it or have it just said out there. It was some level of like, do I want to hook myself to this or put myself in a position where it looked like I was out of the loop, and brings in a whole other thing.
Well, what I'll say is I also think that what Matt was partially trying to do was he saw you, Jack, and Sarah as the like the way that like people build side alliances in Big Brother. I think he saw you and Sarah as that, and he wanted to take out the strength of Orange, because you know you look at Billy and TJ, and they were always sort of known as like a strong duo, and Matt was really, I think, operating in a way where he was trying to help himself, but everybody kind of realized that, especially with you. And I actually think, and I don't know if anybody disagrees with me or agrees with me, I think that Matt, being a fan of yours and wanting to keep you around, puts the target on you for like the early merge. And it's partially why everybody tries to vote for you a lot of the time, is because Matt really sets it up for like Jack to be seen as somebody, and Bennett also talks about it too, that like Jack will go into the merge and go far because nobody will want to vote him out. And I think that it's like compounded with Bennett's correct observation about you and Matt wanting to keep you, like everybody's just like, all right, let's just vote for this guy all the time.
Case is building, yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Chris, what were you gonna say?
No, it's just interesting to hear you say that, because it's like some perspectives that still to this day and moment that I haven't even thought of. And it's really cool to still be like thinking about all these different things that people were bringing up and these perspectives, because, my viewpoint of, this season is just whatever I saw and whatever I experienced, and like hearing you guys like say that is like, wow, I can see how these people played this game now from this sort of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool. And you were much more of a threat than I even had thought. And I think Matt may have created that, I guess, from what Naomi said.
Oh, I appreciate the little boost of maybe Jack is more threatening than we thought. And I did kind of think, going into a merge situation, if day one was like, let's kind of get my footing and figure it out, what I really wanted to do in the merge was like open up a little bit more, do a little bit more to it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Island of Misfit Toys, aka New Muncie, which I love. First of all, Christen, I want to know your reaction to this sort of swap situation, because it's never really been done on Real Survivor before, but like going back to 3 tribes, especially on such a small tribe, is really scary. Christen, I kind of want to know what you thought about like this whole twist.
I don't know if you remember this, but as I was watching, I was leaving comments that I thought that, I think it was it Billy or Bennett who divided? It was Bennett, right?
Billy made the choice.
Oh,
yeah.
Billy. Okay, so at first I thought it was going to be one tribe, or the tribes go to tribal separately. So I thought that the 2 leader strategies were going to be to keep an easy vote on their tribe in the event that they lost, so that they had an easy vote. Because if it was just like each tribe going to tribal individually and they put all the misfits on one tribe, they're not going to have an easy vote in the event that something crazy happens and they lose the challenge. So I think that stunned me. But also, the stars aligned for you, because I do think that this misfit tribe is ultimately what shapes the rest of your game. So
yeah, I agree. I think having that sort of group of publicly being said, yeah, we're gonna exile you from our tribe, we're gonna put you onto this bonus tribe over here, kind of lit a fuel under us a little bit of, let's take this far. If they don't want us, we can want us. Let's take this far. And it's funny that was of the people who survived that tribal from the Misfits, we kind of went and ran with it. I think that was language used. People kept calling us Misfits throughout the merge.
I love that.
It's one of my favorite things is that Bennett is so observant, and he calls it like he sees things like so far in advance, and he pins you guys as the misfits, but then correctly predicts, oh, Chris will come back, that you guys are going to work together, and like he can just, he's like, it's almost like he's like, I don't know how to say this, like he's in the Matrix or something, like he can just see everything happening at all times. And like I love that about him because he's so funny. But he calls you guys the misfits, and like he's absolutely correct.
He's right.
And Jack, something I wanted to ask you about is like when you're constantly with Sarah, right? That's the other interesting thing I find is that you're literally like, you never depart from Sarah. Also, I'm trying to kill a mosquito that's like right near me. What was your feeling as you're with Sarah this whole time? Like, do you think like, oh, she and I are becoming great allies, or are you like, geez, like I'd love to make some new friends? What's going on with you guys? Oh, and then Alex
wants to make a comment about the beard. Thanks, Alex.
Sorry, the comments are cut off. And then
no more comments
to Robin as well. Yes,
Robin.
Jack.
Robin.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a feeling of let's go and strengthen some other people together with and spread a little bit, get to know a few more people. Not be put in a situation where, I'm very clearly on the outs and have to dig my way back in. But there was a little bit of, we had the second grouping, and I was like, I'm meeting 2 new people, and they're people I want to meet, but I would love to have a little bit more going into a merge with a few more cards on my table than people who I worked with on Pink and a couple of people here on the Swap Tribe. that I never really felt was quite a great placement. And then I don't want to keep calling us the Misfits, but it's the easiest shorthand. But them.
I wish there was more time with the Misfits. I think like seeing the four of you converse was just so much
We were
fun.
fun.
And I also think you leading them in that challenge, I've mentioned it many times before, but it's absolutely hilarious because you laugh and you're like kind of confused and Sarah's like, what the hell's going on? But
that zoom into her doing this was I laughed out loud when I saw that one because I didn't notice it. I was too busy. I really thought what I could do is get everybody to get the blocks in a way where I could see them, and then all I would have to do is say stack, 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 and we would be done. And it would be faster to do that than pick up and drop off. I thought it'd be faster to get people to rotate. Which was not the case. People were. I watched it back and they're like, "Yeah, rotate it like 200 degrees counterclockwise." And I was like, "That's not helpful to anybody but me."
Yeah, I know you were using like counterclockwise, and I was like, "Girl, none of these people know which direction counterclockwise is." Now, Christen, I'm wondering for you, like, because I do think that in this vote, the Misfits do have an I think for Jack, Sarah, and Emily, there's an optimal strategy, right? We're going to vote for, but we could always flip and vote for Dresden. They're definitely going to vote for Dresden. Christen, I'm wondering for you if you think that this outcome is like ideal, Dresden going home, or if the Kyle outcome that Jack had originally cast his vote for would be more ideal for Jack's game.
I think that Dresden going home is actually probably ideal because I think that the people who end up getting early and mid-merge, like all of these big threats, are more likely to be scared of the Misfits as a unit if there's one more number there. But I think because there is less numbers and because Sarah and Jack are able to sort of like go to pink and give them a false sense of security of pink power, I think that setup actually worked super well for them. I think that maybe they would have faced a little bit more of a target if Dresden was there just because numbers are scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, coming off of that, like right after that tribal, everyone who attended kind of came together and were like, well, we all did it. We figured it out. Like, let's let this vote go past. And I was very confused as to what actually happened. I was still like very deeply confused. So I'm like, yeah, rah, final 7. Let's do it. I'm not going to turn down a deal. And then afterwards, I'm like, so what happened there? And no one really gave the straight answer as to which makes sense. Watching it back and knowing what actually happened, like nobody wanted to fully own up to that.
I think that was a very interesting situation for you in particular because, the other 4, they voted for Dresden. Alejandra played an idol for Kyle. Paddock played an advantage that she whispered to Sarah about. So it kind of felt like, looking back, like you were sort of in this singular position where Sarah and Paddock had something going on. The other 4 had something going on. You kind of have something with Sarah and you kind of have something with Davy and Alejandra. So what made you trust in this 7 that's what was going to help you get to the end so early on?
Yeah. So looking at that 7, it was, I felt strong with Alejandro and Davy. I felt like I could work with Sarah and Paddock because we had that misfit bonding, and then Kyle is also there. And so I thought 7 people, if they wanna give me information, if they want to talk to me, like I could see that panning out because then out of that 7, what's the 4? The 4 is pink. What's the version after that? It's a challenge and a jury and maybe a little bit more in between that. So I really thought that was like a 4 within a 7, and I was like, I could work in that. That could go well.
And I think that this 7 is so funny because it is like you're gaining 2 new friends, right? You gain Andrea and Kyle after really playing with almost everybody in the game. If you kind of look at it, Jack, the only people that you don't end up playing with are Sam and Marilyn and Liska, but then you play with Dresden, Matt, Kyle, Andrea. Like you kind of meet everybody. And it is really interesting, I think, that this 7 comes out of it. And I didn't understand it either. Christen, if you were in this 7, would you have like worked together? I don't know. I never understood how you guys all came out of this and were like hunky dory. Let's work together.
I think it depends on where I am in the 7. If I genuinely feel like I have before, which like I think it's just from watching that everybody was clear they thought they had a 4. I might have potentially stuck with it. But I think it just depends on everything depends on where you stand in like the social hierarchy. It would have definitely depended on where I stood. I think for Jack, it was definitely the ideal move because he had Pink on one side, Misfits on the other side. I think he had the most routes to the end with this group. So if I'm Jack, yes, I stick with this group. But if I'm anybody else, it just depends.
Yeah, I want to ask really quickly, Jack, is this where your relationship with Paddock begins?
I would say it
did you bond
started
with her like the night before?
right in we conversed a little bit on day 0, but I think it was day 1 kind of walking in, putting on the new Muncie and having that be a very quick like social connection where we just started talking and there was this feeling of this is like a social vibe that clicks.
Mm-hmm. And Jack, I have a question for you of like, do you feel like any vote in the pre-merge you wish went a different way, or do you feel kind of satisfied with the outcome of every pre-merge situation that you kind of ended up in?
So it's interesting because I think had votes gone differently at any of the tribals I would have been at if they weren't me, I could have been fine. But going into it, like it's kind of hard to exactly say. I think the way it all worked out because then I made it there and it did set me up in a nice position. But I think like we swap a name here or there. I can't speak too much to the dynamics of how other tribes would have gone, or people who went out early that I never got to meet, how they would have interacted. Yeah, I guess I'm satisfied going into the merge. I'm like, I've talked to a little bit of everybody, even if it's just like a, hey, how are you? Welcome to our Final 7 Alliance. So there was a little bit of a feeling of like, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit more under the radar, but I'm here and people at least know my vibe.
Yeah, and I think you played really well this pre-merge, especially coming from a really dangerous spot early on, and like all of these moves were very beneficial to you making it to the merge, and like it worked out really well. They were never going to vote for you or Sarah or kind of even Paddock at that misfit vote. That you were never really a target once this part of the situation hits. Like once this pre-merge double swap happens, then I guess I'm phrasing this wrong. Like you had enough allies that like even though you were targeted by people weren't going to vote you out, which I was always impressed by. And I like that a lot. So let's talk about the merge. What a merge this is. What a group. Like this is such a fun group of people, but you had the whole night, Jack. What was that night like? Do you remember it at all?
I remember there being, so we were like, congrats on your merge to Ray, and then we had, our merge feast dinner, and we all were kind of talking a little bit. I did get the fake idle clue about it being in the logs, and so I reached around, and I remember it was you don't want to get chopped, because I remember the next day, I think a camera followed me while I went to the basketball hoops, because I was convinced that chopped didn't mean wood, because that was too easy. It meant baskets, like on the show Chopped, and it's hidden in the basketball hoop. So I walked, doubly overthinking it, but I remember walking and like monologuing as I'm walking past the tree where it was, in my monologue about it has to be in the basketball, because like, of course this clue is true. Why wouldn't it be? So I remember that kind of happening and everyone talking, and there being this feeling of, I remember it being very much like everyone kind of having in the back of their head, we don't want to do an all-nighter where we're all staying up and talking to each other and doing that. We would like to sleep because today was a day and tomorrow will be another day. But nobody was like, we want to be the one to go to sleep first. I think it was me who ended up saying, like, let's just do it. Like, none of us want to stay up all night. We all are just saying we want to stay up all night because we don't want to be the one to say, let's go to sleep. So let's all just go to sleep.
That's hilarious, because that's like, Bennett had a confessional where he talks like kind of makes like a funny voice, and I was wondering who was the one that said let's go to bed. So I guess it was you.
It was me. So we all kind of did it.
So go ahead. I think the relationship between you and Bennett to me is one of the most interesting ones. Just any conversation between the two of you, I enjoyed a lot, or I thought was funny, or was a little cringeworthy, but it was great TV. Really great TV. Can you describe your relationship with Bennett and the time that you had with him?
I really liked Bennett, but I knew that there was like a little bit of like he was a much more serious I'm here to play the game and I'm here to win it vibe than I was putting out. I'm more like I'm here to play, I'm here to have friends, like the play side of a game versus like the play side, the win side of the game. So we did have that kind of serious vibe to our interactions.
I'm going to turn off my camera. The biggest moth just landed in my room, but
Oh no! Go get that moth.
Okay, I'm here. I'm listening.
Cool. I want moth updates as they happen. But yeah, there were sort of the 3 Bennett moments that I remember were him asking me straight up, like, "Are you going to vote this way?" and me being like, "No, probably not." I didn't see there being a ton of value in just lying because I was like, I'm not gonna be good at it. I don't want to. So like, let's not. And there was a second moment. This was towards the like in the merge vote itself. Bennett comes up straight up to me and he's like, "So what is it? What is the name?" And I say like hesitating for like 15 to 20 seconds of just me just keeping an and then I gave him the name. So he talked me his way into it and it ended up not mattering afterwards. And I think I brought it up afterwards because that was like, once the game was over and we were all talking, I was like, but I did give you the name. I was like, I gave you all of the information. I just hesitated while I did it. But I guess he thought that because of the extent that I was hesitating, it was like an obvious lie. Jack doesn't need that.
Okay, so actually, sorry.
Go ahead, Christen.
I was gonna say I do have a question. I was gonna ask like, what were your like paranoia or your trust levels towards your alliance with at the early merge? Because I do think that there is benefit to lying, and that benefit is, let's say that your allies don't actually have your back. It's good to sort of have like a relationship with people not in your alliance so that you have those options in the event that something went wrong. So I'm assuming like, did you just have this like super intense and true trust with your alliance, or was there ever any point at the early merge where you thought maybe they don't have my back?
So I kind of had the mindset of I want to be social with everybody, but I'm going to try to keep strategic decisions into the people I trust. And there might be, I'll have conversations with everybody because that's what you do. But I felt like the people who I was good with, I felt like Davey and Alejandro and Sarah and Paddock were going to give it to me straight all the way through. And most of what they've told me, I kind of factored in as the truth, or it turned out to be the truth when it all shook out. And, you know, that's a very easy pattern to recognize. This is what they said. This is what happened. That must mean that it is true and that I should continue to listen because they're telling me the truth every time.
Jack, so in the vote, your name comes up. You're shocked. What is your initial thoughts when you see your name come up? And what were your initial conversations like right after that tribal council?
I remember right after it happened, I got, I don't remember who it was, but a very clear, like, sometimes that just happens is people were just trying to stir the pot a little bit. Like, don't think anything of it. Like, it wasn't real. There was a little bit of like, oh, like my name was out there. Someone wanted to do something. And obviously nobody wants to see their name. So a little bit of trepidation from there, but it was very clearly smoothed over of like, it's not anything serious. It's someone is probably just trying to stir the pot and make you worry. Don't do it. And so I didn't.
Did you ever suspect it was TJ?
I never suspected it was TJ.
Who did you suspect it was?
Oh boy. I thought it was probably, I know it's like probably someone like Bennett, just someone who just said, I just want to do this anyway. He can't tell me a straight thing. Like, I'm just going to say it and like give it a rallying point or something. I really didn't think it was TJ. I thought TJ and I were pretty good. TJ, when we were talking about that sort of like side alliance, being friends with people and doing, having the sort of plans in your back pocket, TJ and Billy were back pocket people for a little bit. And then when it all kind of surrounded Billy, I'm like, well, maybe I can keep TJ and keep being friends with TJ a little bit more. And then that panned out the way it did. That one's funny because I remember watching it back and feeling like that tribal watching it didn't feel as live as it was. That was a very live tribal. People were whispering in my ear left and right that the plan had flipped because I walked in ready to vote out Bennett. And I was like, it needs to be Bennett. It should be Bennett. Bennett's going to go. And then I'm in tribal and I'm sitting and I'm listening to people talk and a little bug goes in my ear. It's like, we're changing it. Vote TJ. And I was like, I don't know what I want. I don't think I want to do that. And they're like, no, like, we need to do TJ. Vote for TJ. It was like a very live, in the moment decision to the point where, like, one of the things that's my what if I had done it differently was what if I had kept TJ, voted out Bennett, and tried to pull TJ aside and said something.
Okay. Christen, talk to me about that idea because I've actually never heard that before as a concept, Jack, and I'm fascinated by it. But Christen, what do you think about that?
So my assumption was that if someone like TJ stays, he is more of an aid to someone like Paddock. I don't know what your and TJ's personal relationships were. I think maybe if you genuinely approach him that he would have taken you up on that. But I also think that if TJ stayed, it would have given Paddock more ammunition to have more options. And it's possible maybe if Paddock anticipated that she would be a target and like the later stages of the game, it's possible that she tries to weaponize TJ in order to ensure that doesn't happen. But I think it's an interesting idea, and I want to hear more about your and TJ's personal relationship. And do you think that it's possible that you could have won him over in that moment?
I think I could have. I think I could have come in and said, like, everybody wanted you out. I didn't. I kept you here. Let's go play this together. Let's figure out what's our group that we can go and assemble and do something a little bit different.
Right. What does this Avengers look like? I think that, like, especially you and TJ is a very personable person, and I think that Bennett had kind of written you off, but TJ is somebody who I know from playing with him, but also watching him play. He's always willing to work with somebody. Like, he's always ready to work with you, and I think that Bennett and Kai were people who were much more willing to just write Jack off and write Paddock off and say, like, they won't vote for us. We just need to target the people who might flip. And so I do think that, Jack, it's a really interesting idea to keep TJ in the game and vote out Bennett, especially considering that Bennett really is the earworm for a lot of people and a lot of people's doubts. But also in many ways, I think that Bennett targeting like people like Andrea and you, Jack, almost help you in a way because people don't want to vote out Andrea and Jack. They want to keep them around and they want to target the other big players. Like, everybody is looking at you, but in reality, like, you never really go. And it more so happens to Andrea, we know, but like, it's this weird, like, beneficial thing, but then it also kind of ruins your game in a lot of ways. I don't know. I'm wondering if, like, Christen, you have any thoughts on, like, the way that somebody becomes a target because their name is out there so often, and then how it kind of spirals into, like, the lack of people respecting the player, I would say, is the way I kind of perceive it, even though you deserve respect. I don't know.
I think that Survivor is a game, and there's like two elements to how you play the game. I think the first is obviously like the strategy and the social, like the technical things that you can do to get people on your side. But then I also think that ego definitely plays a role. And I think when you're under a pressure cooker, it is super easy when you truly believe something to write people off. And especially when they get votes, I think a little bit is almost like jealousy or resentment that they can't get you out. And so I think that part of it is the ego talking. And I think that the ego is a very dangerous thing in Survivor. I think that maybe they didn't have to write you off because you did well in puzzles. You were very aware of how you were perceived, and you did weaponize that. I just think that maybe that strategy would have worked with a different cast. I think this was just the wrong cast for that strategy to work with. But I, like, as a viewer, I do admire your approach to the game and the fact that you got so many votes and survived.
Yeah, I'm a vote magnet.
Jack, I want to talk about one of my favorite moments, the tree. So everyone's running to the tree. Paddock's up in the tree, everyone's staring, she falls down from the tree, the idol gets to the ground. What was that moment like for you, seeing the idol fall to the ground?
There was a little bit of a moment of like, because we're trying to catch Paddock. Paddock's fallen. Everyone's like, is Paddock okay? And I'm looking down at Paddock and I'm looking and I'm like, I see a bundle that looks like something. This is probably the idol. And like, nobody's touched it, I don't think. It's whoever touches it first, it's theirs. So if she knocked it out of the tree and she never touched it, then it's mine. And the worst case scenario that happens is they roll back the footage and they're like, no, it's not. It's Paddock's or it's somebody else's. Like, give it back. But I was like, if I can get the idol, like, I'll take an idol. I'm not going to say no. And then I pulled Paddock to the side immediately because I was like, she kind of found it. It was her who went up to the tree and knocked it off. She should probably know, and she should know that I have it. And by that point, it was such a public hullabaloo. It was like not even a hidden immunity idol. It was like the publicly well-known immunity idol.
Well, Jack, I find it so interesting because people can sort of say, oh, Jack was very selfish, but like you do exactly what you need to do, because if Kai grabs it, then you guys are forced to turn on each other at 8. And that's exactly what your alliance doesn't want to do, because then Kai is able to like utilize what would be the Alejandro vote to sort of say to Davey and Kyle, like, hey, you guys are next, right? It just spirals out of control. So in a way, it's very preventative. And I think that it is a moment of like, people are mad and they're trying to get you out, but like it's the best thing you could have done for your alliance. Christen, I mean,
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Like, I think it was like the best. You look kind of like a dick, but it's like for the alliance, baby.
No, I think it was 100% the right move, and I was thinking about this earlier, and it's for the exact same reason Naomi said it. Idols are great for making moves. They're great for saving yourself or saving allies, but I think one of the most underrated like benefits of having an idol is knowing that somebody else doesn't have it. And I think that ultimately leads to your alliance's success. I'm curious on whether you ever had a plan to like use this idol to make any particular moves, or did you like consider it, or when you grabbed the idol, was it mainly for preventative purposes?
I grabbed the idol because it was there and I wanted an idol. I wasn't trying to think too far in ahead. I didn't want to count my chickens before they all hatch. Count my chickens before they hatch. That's the saying. Yeah. I wanted to grab the thing. And I like watching it back and being the narrative being like, oh, Jack's such a dick for getting it. Like as I was watching, I'm like, you all would have done the same thing in this scene. You're telling me you wouldn't have grabbed an idol that was staring in front of you? Like you would have. You're just looking for something to say.
Yeah.
Now there's a moth in my house.
Oh no, I got rid of mine. Well, Christen, I think you're completely right about the ego thing, and I think this is another thing that is an example of like Jack doing something that is pretty harmless in the game of Survivor, but people's egos kind of absorbing it and being like, how dare Jack take Paddock's idol? And it's kind of like, what the hell's going on, gang?
And I don't want to say that ego is a bad thing, because everybody has ego. I have ego or whatever, but it does play a role in Survivor. So
yeah, I think that's a great observation, and like it really manifests, I think, in affecting certain players in certain ways that I'm always fascinated by. But Jack, you basically, I don't know if I want to say that you get spooked into playing your idol, but you do play it this round, and I'm wondering what was going through your head in terms of like, do I need to play this? What's going on? How was that for you?
Yeah. Oh, I found that idol, and there was a little bit of conversation of like, oh, Jack has the idol. And then the air just felt different for like the rest of that round. And I don't know if that was me psyching myself up into paranoia, but there was a little bit of a feeling like every conversation I was in, I would like tilt my head over and there was another conversation happening like a couple of feet away of people talking. And there was this feeling of people saying the idea, Jack's complacent, he's got an idol, there's no way he's going to play it because there's no way he would. Why would he play it? He's in a good spot. This is when we get him and just make its way through. And it felt like such a different atmosphere going into that there was some sense in my head of like, I would rather play this and have it be done and not have to worry about going home on this one, just because that was such a different atmosphere than what I had played the whole game with before, and I didn't like the writing that I felt like was on the wall.
Yeah, and that's a scary spot, I think, because you have the idol and you want to use it to help your allies, but then I think 9 is like a perfect flip vote, right? I mean, Chris, you edited this episode, and it's it's one of the best episodes, I think, because it's just so chaotic in all of its glory. But this is when Bennett goes home, and like Bennett will not let Bennett die silently, you know?
Hmm.
So Chris, I'm wondering what you think about like Jack getting really targeted for this idol that he kind of just stumbles across.
I mean, I think it's interesting, especially hearing Paddock talk about how she believed Jack shouldn't have gotten the idol, and then that she would have done the same thing if it was in like if the shoes were on the other foot. First of all, but Bennett's fight was great, but the writing on the wall was always going to be there after the idol had been found. After the idol was found, it was pretty much common knowledge to the entire group. Bennett is going home, and there was no really second guessing. I think the paranoia really was just in Jack's head. I remember, in that tribal council moment when Jack got up to play his idol, I was actually very shocked because I didn't think that he would have played it at that vote. I thought it was just so clear that it was going to be Bennett to everybody. Um, but hearing Jack say those words, like I said earlier, is like a new perspective that I still didn't know about the game. And it's so cool to just kind of hear that side of it and how your own personal paranoia really can play into your strategy and how well you can play in the game. Um, but I knew when I was going to edit this that I was just going to make it a clear cut that Bennett did the best he could, but he's out. There's nothing he could do about it. And then we get into the Kai vote right after that, which is this buildup of this underdog. Like, she didn't take the idol when she could have taken the idol. She just had won immunity at a crucial point, and she came in second place in this immunity challenge. And then finally, the 7 is now the final 7. But I want to say, I think it's so interesting how things happen for a reason. Jack plays that idol, and then the producers come together and say, hey, we're doing OTEV. Let's rehide the idol in OTEV. How freaking cool would that be for someone to find the idol in OTEV? So, like, if Jack didn't play that idol, we wouldn't have had such a cool moment. And then that's one of my other favorite moments is being able to have an idol during my favorite Big Brother challenge that I turned into an immunity challenge. So, Jack, do you remember, that challenge? Like, how did you feel like competing in that challenge? Are you a fan of Big Brother? What did you think about our idea about hiding the idol there?
Because you almost catch it. You almost find it, Jack. You miss it.
I almost do find it. I remember you were saying like this challenge, like if any of you were Big Brother fans, it's OTAV. And I distinctively remember being one of the most excited for it. I don't watch Big Brother. I try every year and I start and I watch a little bit of it. I'm like, oh, this could be fun. And then I always fall off, usually like a couple of weeks in, and then just have it on in the background of Twitter with different feed updates telling me what's going on. But I knew OTEV. I had enough of a Big Brother background where I'm like, oh, I know what this challenge is. It's like a recurring one. It's pretty neat. I was excited. It was a fun one. I remember running around finding bricks. I don't remember who the name was that was on the brick, but there was one name that was on the brick that I kept drawing, and I was like, who the fuck is this person? Because I kept drawing her name. I don't remember her name, but I remember there being like, oh, we like used people from season 3 on like some of these bricks.
Yes. My guess is it might be Sanchaya, but like it's so funny, Jack, because if you don't find this idol, if you don't play this idol, then Paddock doesn't find this idol. Then Paddock, I think, becomes a target at 6 or 5, rightfully so. And then I think Paddock could be voted out at those points in time. Christen, I'm curious what you think just kind of about this. I would call it the kind of like the butterfly effect of this idol, especially in this moment.
First thing I want to say is I think it was a totally fine move to play the idol. I think the worst case scenario if Jack plays the idol is that he still has a majority alliance. So like don't ever like beat yourself up about that. But I like what Paddock says at the right before the final tribal council where it's like sometimes you just got to get lucky. And I think that's exactly what happened to Paddock. And I agree with everything that you said, that I think if she doesn't find the idol, that she's taken out. But I think she's potentially taken out at 5, because I feel like Jack, Andrea, and Sarah would form a 3, and they wouldn't want to jeopardize that by trying to take Paddock out at 6, maybe, unless for some reason Kyle and Davey got desperate enough and they decide, okay, my only way to stay is to vote out Paddock. But if I'm Davey and Kyle at that point, I team up with Paddock. So I think that everything with the idol lined up to give this final 3. But I'm curious, Jack, was your ideal final 3 always Andrea and Sarah, or was there ever any point that you wanted to take Paddock to the end?
For a while, I did want to take Paddock far. I never wanted to vote Paddock out, was sort of it. Because I enjoyed just hanging out. But there was that sort of feeling going into 7 where it then becomes, I probably wanted to then do Kyle at 7, Davey and Alejandro at 6 and 5. Maybe not exactly in that order, but keep Kyle, get rid of Kyle, and then have this sort of pink group a little bit. And then kind of it was around this point when I started thinking like, oh, this is an end game. Like, this is what end game starts to look like. I need to start thinking about what the end game is if we're in it. This feeling of I can't keep Alejandro and Davey here because they have such great stories. And they beat me in the end, and I don't even have to consider there's an argument there. I feel like there's arguments with these other names.
So if Paddock doesn't have the idol, let's say she doesn't find it, you think you take her to the Final 4 anyway, no matter what?
I think I would have.
Okay. That makes sense then.
Yeah, and I think that the only plausible scenario where she goes out earlier than that is probably if Kyle wins Final 5 immunity and she doesn't have the idol, then I think they would vote for her as the biggest threat. It would be difficult, but they would do it. Because I do think that Kyle was pushing Paddock as the name. Like, we see him flip-flop a lot, but I do think Paddock really did recognize the threat level of Paddock, and that's what he was trying to do with her at 5, is get her to play the idol on him so that he could be the shield for her at 4. But at the same time, Kyle was really like, y'all want to vote Paddock out? Like, she's gonna win. And it is very funny. These are some big whips, Emily, and guess what? They didn't happen. So you can just sit there with your little plaque that Chris made you and be happy.
I really feel like the 4 though was just such a strong 4. Yeah. Like, I try and play these what ifs and these multiverse sort of things. Sorry, I'm a Marvel fan. Basically, like, there's just no scenario that I feel like works out that the 4 don't become the 4. It just was so dead set, strong. Like, it's funny because we talk about the misfits. Andrea wasn't on the misfit tribe, but she was a misfit in the game. So she kind of found her own tribe with those 3, and she kind of replaced Dresden in that, and they became the Final 4. And I think seeing, Alejandro, Davey, and Kyle go just kind of worked out perfectly. Everything just worked out perfectly for the road for that 3 to get to the 4 of them to get to the end. I think the only hiccup would have been Kyle winning that challenge, which was so close to happening. Yeah. So getting into the Final 4, kind of, because we know that those 3 votes, there really wasn't much going to change.
Well, I think
unless you have something.
Alex brings up one thing, and Christen, actually, I'm curious if you agree or disagree with this, that Emily finding the idols that puts the target on her. And while I would say that, I would also say that Kyle still saw Paddock as like the best player besides himself. Like, Davey goes, and then Kyle's like, well, who is it if it's not me? And I think he always saw Paddock as that person. But Christen, what do you think about what Alex has to say?
Well, obviously, I wasn't there for all the conversations, but I interpreted Paddock as always being a threat, because I remember in the earlier episodes, people were talking about Paddock always like trying to go like back and forth between 2 alliances and how she was perceived to be this sort of middleman. And people seemed aware of that in these earlier episodes, and I thought that it was possible that stigma of her being a super strong social player sort of always made her a threat. But I do think that finding the idol definitely added on to that. But I think she would have been possibly seen as a threat no matter if she finds the idol or not, but maybe that's a wrong assessment because I wasn't there the entire time. I didn't see all the conversations.
Yeah,
I didn't feel
it's
the
interesting.
atmosphere, so.
And Kyle is here, so maybe Kyle is going to shine a light. But Kyle wants to talk about how Jack was whispering to me as we walk into tribal that when Kyle says that the girls have an all-girl alliance. So Jack, let's talk about this a little bit because it's less of a set alliance and more like Andrea and Sarah and Paddock were sick of seeing women voted out of the game. So talk to me about that realization for you, Jack.
There was a feeling at 5 going in at 5 and kind of looking around and saying, oh, I see a final 3 right here. And then, one of them wins immunity. It's Kyle and I, and everyone's saying Kyle. And I was like, I gotta talk to Kyle about something. And I was like, I kind of see the writing on the wall here. You're 5, I'm 4. I don't know what we do about it. And he was like, well, then don't do it. Like, vote for Andrea. That was like, I think blatantly, I was like, I don't know like what to do. He's like, just vote Andrea. Like, then don't do it. Don't vote for me. But I felt like at 4, Kyle wins at 4. He's in 3, and then that's all there is to it. I really did feel like Kyle going at 5 was accurate for what was probably best for me. Because even if there is, I think there was around this time I did a confessional that was to the tune of like, we're kind of in the end game. Like, all I need to do is like make it past this vote at 5, win at 4, and then just make the jury like vote for me at the end. Like, that's all I need to do, and then I win.
Oh, I have a question about that. So you thought that did you think that the girls' alliance was a legit alliance, or was that just something that you told Kyle as a filler?
It was a little bit of both. It was like, I can see the numbers here. It would make sense that the numbers are a thing. But I do want to like talk to Kyle and say something's going on. If I think there's any way he can say, you know what, you're right. How do we spin this? I have my special Final 5 advantage, and I'm going to play it. Thank you for telling me. You never know.
The special Final 5 advantage that we've cooked up. It's got it. You just spoiled season 6, Jack. How could you?
Jack Otev like combed through every brick in Otev for future Survivor New York players.
Oh man. Well, Chris, let's talk about the Final 4. Go ahead.
Okay, so obviously Kyle goes. We're down to 4. It's 3 girls. Is there a sense of urgency, like, oh shit, like I need to win this immunity or I'm out? Or did you feel like Sarah was always going to have your back 100%?
It was do or die. I felt like I was either going to win this challenge or I was going to be 4th place.
And
that
when you saw that puzzle, did you say, another oh shit moment, I got this puzzle, all I need to do is get there first or second, and I pretty much claimed the victory?
That was exactly it. I knew that puzzle. I figured all I have to do is just the running and the balancing. I get to that puzzle with enough time. I can do this.
It was very impressive. Christen, do you think that like for the final 3 of Andrea, Sarah, and Paddock voting out Jack is the right move? Like, I'm curious what you think that everybody's optimal move at 4 is in this moment.
See, I think that everybody's optimal move is to vote out Paddock. I just think that because they all maybe played a little more under the radar, that it's possible that they could have maybe claimed things at the final tribal council that could have gotten them brownie points, regardless if it's true or not. Like, I don't think you have to tell the truth at the final tribal council. Whereas I think Paddock, she had the moves, but she also had the label of being a big threat. And I think that was something that was always going to be super, super hard to overcome. I'm impressed that the vote was a tie vote. I'm happy that the vote was a tie vote and that multiple types of games were recognized. But I do think that the optimal move for everybody is to vote out Paddock. I do see the argument for maybe Jack voting out Sarah for some reason so that he can claim, look, I wasn't Sarah's GOAT. I let people think that I was her GOAT and then I cut her at the end just to like so that he could claim maybe ownership to those moves. I think it's possible that that's a good move for Jack, but besides that, I think everybody else should probably vote out Paddock at that point.
I mean, knowing Sarah, that would have lost Sarah's vote for sure. And interesting, Jack, Paddock says, I think Sarah or I get the votes no matter what. I would not have voted Jack. and I'm realizing now that she means she wouldn't have voted you out. I thought she was saying she wouldn't have voted for you at the
Wouldn't
end,
vote
but I
me
was
at
like,
the
that's kind of rude. But
Yeah.
I see it
No.
now.
So Jack, did Sarah ever tell you, "Hey, I am voting for Andrea," or when you get to tribal and you see those votes, like that's the first time you realize that Sarah was voting for her?
She turned to me and whispered sorry as the votes were read.
Okay. And was that
So-
sort of a vindictive move when we tell you, okay, we're going to do the revote? It was like a fuck you to Sarah, like basically when you voted, you did your vote and then it forced the rocks?
Yeah, like honestly, I was mad, and as soon as they were like, you were like, all right, so this is what it is. Like, it's rocks. Everyone has to draw a rock unless you have immunity, and my face just lit up. I was like,
Yes, it
oh, I'm
does.
absolutely taking them to rocks. I was mad, and
It's
I was
funny.
like, whatever you want to do. Like,
It's funny because like Sarah says very openly to the group, like, hey, I'm not going to rocks. So that was your insight right there that like, hey, I could force it to rocks. And I think that was sort of Sarah's mistake, is saying it so openly and not thinking that you would do such a thing. So you definitely took advantage of it. But I think your voting confessional in that moment was so funny.
Oh.
Naomi, did you see that?
I know that confessional by heart because it's one of my favorites. It's fuck it, let's draw rocks.
I think me and Alex are in the voting booth, and we're both like, "Oh my god, this is so crazy!" It was definitely one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But like, that was just total chaos, and I love
Yes.
that you did that.
Yeah.
it was fun. One of my friends messaged me after the finale was over to the tune of like, that kind of like chaos is like, that's what I was expecting to see from you. Like, that's the Jack I know.
Well, and Paddock makes, I think, a really good point in Christen. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about this. Like, Jack had 3 really tight allies that would not have voted for him, and he went to the end with them. And I think, honestly, Jack, that is a really hard part of the game, is trusting the people that you work with so implicitly and also being correct, because we see for Davey and Kyle and Alejandro that they have these tight allies that then cut them, and you don't have that. You have the ability to create this alliance. Christen, what do you think about the merit of having a tight alliance that goes to the end together?
I think that trust and relationships are obviously the single most important thing in Survivor. Obviously, like, you can't get anywhere without those relationships, but also I do think that it is a testament to your game if you do get to the end with your allies, because you can sit in front of the jury and say, look, I got to the end with people I wanted to get to the end with. I not only was able to get myself to the end, I was able to get my allies to the end. And I think that obviously it's good to have those allies near the end to get yourself to the end. But also I do think that you need to be thinking about, okay, how can I one-up this person at a final tribal council? How can I one-up this person, like, in the game? Like, even when you're making moves, I think it's always important to think about how you can sort of one-up your allies. But I think it's definitely important to keep them, because that's what gets you to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah, so Jack, watching this rock draw happen, who did you kind of most want to draw the bad rock?
I kind of wanted Sarah to draw it. That was the first moment, honestly, where I thought, oh, I could have just voted for Sarah. Like, I could have always done that. And it was sort of like, if Sarah draws this, like, I feel like that's a chance that I have, because people on the jury have been, as they're kind of walking out, as they're talking, the word on the street is jurors don't like Andrea. And then I'm really just having to beat out Paddock. And I thought maybe I had a shot. Maybe there's an approach there that can kind of get me through it. And then I do have, these moves are mine, and I'm the only one who can speak for them here at the end. And Sarah would have been a rock who got her out. It would have been me, but it would have been implicitly me.
Yes, and I think that is a really funny, like, I know, like, I love Sarah, and I love that she's at the end,
Sarah's
but
great.
it would have been a hilarious outcome if, like, Sarah draws the rock, and you can see it on everybody's face. They're so scared. Like, Paddock's terrified she's going to get voted out. Andrea's like, I'm going to get voted out. I lost immunity. It could be me, and they're going to just vote, or I'm going to face this jury. And then Sarah's like, holy fuck, I'm going to draw a rock even though I didn't get any votes. And like everybody's face is like pure panic. And Jack is laughing his ass off. It's one of my favorite. You can see, or you can hear me like gasp in some of the footage when you win the immunity, because I'm just like, oh my God, like it's going to be a bloodbath, because this is exactly what happens. And it's really funny to me, even though I love my friends and I don't want them to be stressed. It was a very good.
Naomi's favorite moment is always going to be, what was it, Naomi? Like, you guys go talk after
Yes.
Jack wins immunity?
So Jack, you win immunity, you put the necklace on and you just go, I'll let you guys talk. And you walk away. And and I started laughing so hard that you can hear it in the video clip, because I thought it was the perfect like way to be like, fuck you, I just won immunity, go figure it out, because I knew you were going to vote for me. And, you know, in some ways they weren't really going to vote for you, but it is like a hilarious win to say, like, you're definitely not going to vote for me now. Christen, did you have this puzzle memorized, by the way? Do you know this puzzle very well, the 9x9 grid?
I've done it before. I don't want to say I've like extensively studied this puzzle or anything, because I haven't, but I have done it before. And as you know, I'm a numbers girl. I love my math, so I think maybe like this challenge would be a fun one. So
yeah. Jack, when it comes to Final Tribal Council, I think you did a perfectly fine job. Like, you did not deliver a bad Final Tribal Council. I think you were up against two juggernauts of fake Survivor.
Two veterans of fake Survivor. Before we get into Final Tribal, I do just want to say I was convinced in Final Four deliberations that tiebreaker was actually making fire. I was completely convinced. I would not hear it from anybody that it wasn't. I'm like, no, it has to be. It absolutely has to be. Oh, why wouldn't it be? We're out here in the woods, like, let's make actual fire. And then everyone's like, no, we're not going to light fires in Chris's yard. We're not going to do. And I'm like, no, we have to. That's absolutely what. And then it was rock, so it was that full like narrative thing. I was flat out convinced. It was funny to me watching that back and having a couple moments of being like, so how do you like practice making fire? And they're like, no, because it's not going to be fire.
I kind of wish we did the fire puzzle, but you know, you guys had already done it. But I love the idea of like, you can't do fire, so you do a fire puzzle.
This is the closest thing we have to fire.
Yeah. So Jack, with this final Tribal Council, I think that first of all, there's a lot of great questions from everybody. I do think this jury gave everybody the opportunity, and I'm just wondering, Jack, getting to watch it back, like how it feels, because I've never gotten to watch a Final Tribal Council I've done back, but I'm curious what that's like for you to experience.
It was, so all of the things in the season that I wanted to watch, like I really wanted to watch round 2 with the digging thing and the first pink tribal. I really wanted to watch the round of the Misfit tribe forming. I really wanted to watch the Idol Find. I really wanted to watch Final Four. I did not want to watch Final Tribal Council at all. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I felt better about it than I was. So watching it back there was a little bit of, I can see the moments where I felt like, oh, it's not going to be me again. And that was strange to sort of see it as I recognized it when I was in there. But I do think, you know, you watch it back and you're like, we've been talking about what ifs. My big what if is like, what is the final tribal performance that gets me the win at the end? Because there has to be one, just statistically speaking. All I have to do is convince a jury. So what is that saying?
I think you're totally correct in that basically the way you get to the win is the way you explain it. But I feel like you needed just more time to get there. There was so many great moments of you explaining things about your game, like especially like right before the Final Tribal Council. And I was like, okay, he could use all this ammo. But I felt like it was lost in the Final Tribal Council, especially in the moment about what were the moves that you made in the game. You couldn't give, I think it was TJ's question, like what move did you make in the game? And you basically said no move. And then Sarah was like, oh, but you did do the Final Four move. And I think, and that's something that, you know, it's important for me to know, is that you need more time during the Final Tribal Council. It's very helpful for you to collect your thoughts. Do you feel like if you had more time, maybe a few hours, that it would have helped you to better compose yourself?
I think there was a little bit of time in between for composure. I didn't do very much with it. We hung around and talked a little bit. And there was a little bit of everyone being like, all right, a few more cards on the table. This is kind of what we're going to talk about. I think I had my thought in mind and then I lost it, as is often the case. Walking back, if I had more time into presenting it, I think the thing that had me, and Naomi, you're going to laugh at this was right after Edge of Extinction aired. And I was very annoyed watching that season and having spoilers, I guess, if you have never seen Survivor Edge of Extinction, don't listen, skip 15 seconds ahead, where Chris's final tribal performance is like, well, at the end of the game, I did all these cool things, and don't you respect that? And everyone being like, yeah, I guess we do. And me in the moment being like, I don't know if I quite do. So I didn't want to walk in and have my entire speech like, look at how awesome I was last round. Doesn't that make up for how much I was doing, how little I was doing before then? Isn't that great that I came in at the end and knocked all of the pins down? So that was sort of in the back of my head of like, I don't want to give that form of the speech because it's very easy to say, we want someone who played this whole game, not someone who played the last round.
Mm-hmm. Well, Christen, I'm wondering, sort of with Jack's bigger question of like, what is the possible way to secure the win? Do you have any thoughts on what that could be? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I think Jack has sort of been like undermining how much he weaponized his perception, and I think that it's possible that he could have gone the angle that he was able to weaponize his perception and to be saved so many times that it helped shape so many of these votes. I think that it's possible that he could have like claimed something like that as a move. I don't think a move is always necessarily saying a name and having it done. I think that there are multiple clever ways to get your agenda across. I think it's possible maybe if Jack wows them with an argument surrounding that maybe the jury's so stunned that they do vote for him. Because I do think that you played a good game, Jack, and I really admired like how self-aware you were and how you were able to weaponize your perception. But honestly, I can't read this jury's mind. I don't know if they were open to all three finalists. It sounds like they were. So I think it's possible that you stunned them, but it's something that hindsight's always 20/20, and Survivor is always easy to like say, oh, I could have done this like a year or 2 years later. But in the moment, I do think that you delivered a pretty good speech. So
yeah, no, I'm very proud of how I kind of went into that. I just a little bit stronger. Get a vote or two would have been.
I still love. It's like one of my favorite lines ever of you saying that it's a final three horror show would be me getting to the end and getting 0 votes. Like that's why I had to make it like an episode title because I just love that you had said that and you were great with the confessionals.
Yes.
And it ended up being a horror show, but I feel like in the end you became such a rootable, likable character. I mean, you were a contender going up against two, sort of juggernauts in the LRG community. I mean, look at Paddock's resume. I mean, look at Sarah now. Like, she has played so many games and gotten so far in so many games. And this is your first time coming out here. You got here later than everyone else. You had less time to get to know people, and you still got to the final 3. You found an idol. You won an immunity. You never were really a true target to go home at any point. So that's another credit toward your game. So there are so many, I want to say, pluses to your game and so many things that we could credit you towards in that regard. But not winning is sad, but at the same time, I feel like you won in the experience, and I think doing the game. I think that's what you told me after it was over.
And that kind of is it. Like, it's a zero-sum game. One person's going to win, 17 other people are just going to be there. And that was sort of my mindset of like, like going up into the game. I'm like, statistically speaking, like, of course I'm gonna win. I'm not gonna consider myself not winning any other possibility, but like, reasonably speaking, I'm probably not going to. So let's make it a good time. I'll consider it a success if I have a lot of fun. I at least make the merge so people will want to date. All that sort of stuff. If I play both days, I have a good time. I make a couple new friends, and I get a couple of really good stories out of it. And then like, it was a win. And leaving, I was like, maybe I played the entire game all the way through, and I did all of the things that you want to do that aren't winning. So it was all big.
And Jack, I've been waiting to ask this question for 2 years. I've never asked you this question. So You held the ultimate power. You got to decide the winner of this entire game. And you decided to vote for Paddock over Sarah, who you had played every single moment of this game with. Why did you vote for Paddock to win?
It's the question on everyone's mind. That is, a lot of people have asked me it, and it did kind of come down to a couple of things. It was, how did you do in Final Tribal? I really appreciated, like, I was really into the flashy kind of gameplay that Paddock had, and it does kind of come down to, you all talked a little about it last week with Sarah. There was a social game that Paddock and I had where we were talking to each other and joking and doing that sort of thing, to where we became friends. And that was a stronger bond than with Sarah, who had been a good strategic partner and we had been working together all the time, but it wasn't there from as much of a social perspective. So kind of coming in, there was a little bit of what am I going to do, but I was sort of like, gameplay, I played a lot of game with both of them the entire second half. So it was who had the game that if I were a juror and it was a final two and it was the two of them and I was sitting asking, what would I have done?
Sure. And I think, to be fair, like, just because you played with Sarah doesn't necessarily mean that, like, you guys always voted together, but at first it's out of convenience, right? She's the other Pink Tribe member.
Right.
And then it becomes a strategic relationship, but you guys didn't start off as strategic allies from day one. It was really like a bond formed over convenience. Christen, when you hear that, does Jack's vote make sense? I think Jack's vote makes sense to you to begin with, but does Jack's vote make sense more hearing his explanation of it?
Oh, give me 1 second. Okay, sorry, I was not muting for some reason. No, I think it definitely makes sense. I think that Jack's vote was also just a testament to how different people in Survivor value different things, and I think that that's also a testament by the fact that the vote was super tied. Like, do you value that social connection, that more like wanting to get your hands on everybody's cookie jars like type of game, or do you value like more of like the game bot game? Like, do you value the connections? And I think Jack proved that social game at the end of the day truly does matter, and it's something that a lot of players like try to achieve, and I think it's a testament to Paddock's game that she was able to achieve that, and Jack's vote 100% is valid, and it makes sense for that reason. I think I wouldn't have been shocked either way, because I could also see Jack being someone who values more of that under the radar strategic game as well. But I think that's just who you are as a player, and I love that. So
yes, and that's like, I think, the beauty of Survivor, right? And Jack, when this happens, like, did you see yourself as the Laurel? Like, what was going through your head?
Oh yeah, I was like, oh, I'm Laurel here. I think one of the first people I texted called me Laurel pretty immediately. Like, after the game was over and people were like, how'd it go? How'd you do? I was like, oh, 0 vote finalists broke the tie. And they're like, oh, okay, Laurel, way to go. So, but there was, I think somebody has called me Laurel once or twice, like, after the fact.
I'm sure that's our friend.
I like
Jared
Laurel.
Laxer.
It is our friend Jared Laxer.
Of course it is.
Oh.
So, Jack, anything else that we need to talk about? It's been a wonderful hour and a half, but I'm just wondering if, like, we have reached have we dove deep enough? Like, have we gotten to the end? Or is there anything else you want to talk about?
Laurel is great.
Laurel's
Laurel's fun.
I love
Laurel,
her.
Ghost Island had a lot of good, exciting characters in it. I don't want to get on my Ghost Island perch, but that's not what we're here about. I am, like, glad that I played. I really, really am. I do think there was a little bit of, because there was kind of coming into it saying, I want to make new friends, have a great experience, but there also was a feeling of, like, this could be, if you let it, something that is a moment you think about forever, where you say, we did talk about the car accident, Alex.
Yeah, we talked about it, Alex.
Yeah. Story early on, but there was that sort of feeling of, like, this could be like a pivot moment in, like, your confidence, how you are as a person. And I do think, like, the me now, after doing a fake Survivor game, is a better version. And I don't know how much I want to put on playing fake Survivor as to a dimension thing, but I really do think it was something that, you know, made a significant impact. So if anybody wants to go and do it, you should play live reality games. They're fun and you learn something about yourself.
Jack, I want to know, is there anything that you kept from your season?
I
Like
have the
clues
original
or...
books.
Okay.
I don't have the water bottle anymore. I wish I had kept that.
Your favorite water bottle.
I was just constantly, I was filling up my water. It was like a cycle. I would do a challenge. I would fill up my water bottle. I would talk to everybody. We'd go to tribal. Rinse, repeat.
Jack, I have to tell you, it was so hard to find opening shots for you because you are always holding the water bottle close to your face. So it took me forever to find good shots for your title sequence. And I was just like, oh my God, put the water bottle down, Jack. But it is really funny. Especially, my favorite is that moment where, like, Bennett asks you, like, so, like, he says something about, like, do you want to work together or who do you think you're voting for? And you're like, you just slam the water bottle and you're like, gotta be honest, I think I'm voting for you. Like, it's such a great like prop to have in the whole
It was
season.
fun to have a fun little. And I think people caught on pretty quick, and I caught on pretty quick watching it back. Of like, oh, that's like my nervous sipping on the water.
That was your thing, the water. Because I could see that you never wanted to lie, and when you knew you had to lie, you would sip on the water bottle.
Right. It was my tell, but it was so obviously my tell that I was like, I'm just not gonna bother. But I do have the original buffs. I have the fantastic buff that was made after the fact.
Yes.
I need to figure out a way to display it. I saw it might have been you, Naomi, who puts it on a clothes hanger and like clips it.
Yeah, it's that I just nailed some nails into a wall, and I don't love it. I'd like to frame my buffs, but I don't know how. So if you find anything, let me know.
Yeah, I was gonna buy like a styrofoam mannequin head at like a craft store.
That's a good idea.
And just have like a head hanging out in the background with a survivor buff on it.
Oh fuck, that's really funny.
It's a conversation piece, like, oh, why do you have a head in your background? And what's that stylish thing that it's wearing? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you. What a perfect segue.
The CBS reality show Survivor. Christen, I'm actually curious if you would say the same thing that Jack said about the bonds that you make during fake Survivor, and like if it does. Because Jack, I fully agree. Christen, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on like the transformation that these games put us under.
Yeah, no, every time I play a game, it changes my life. Like, the only spoiler I'll give about Season 5 is, like, it changed me. I think it changed everybody. I think that it really is a pressure cooker in terms of, like, it exposes, like, mannerisms that you have. It exposes, like, sort of, like, how you think through things. It really helps you to get to know yourself more, but also when you're scared and you're with people in, like, a super intense situation, it bonds you closer to them. There's like science that proves that like when you're scared, you're like more likely to like be attached to people. And so those friendships, but also like the self-discovery is definitely something that changes your life. So everybody apply for Season 6.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
absolutely
not right now.
apply for Season 6. Once applications are open.
Yeah, my so would you call this Jack's accepting donations mannequin? So that would be Jack's mannequin. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Naomi.
I like that.
Yeah. One last thing, Chris, I'm glad that we decided to match. I know that wasn't intentional, but I'm glad that we did.
I love it.
Wait,
Yes.
Naomi,
You just
I'm
need a
wearing like
hat.
a brown shirt. Are we matching?
No, this is
Oh.
gray.
It looks
Tragedy.
brown. It looks brown,
I'm
though.
stupid. I thought we matched.
We
That's
should have
okay.
formally coordinated next
I
time.
know. Yes, and Chris, I have to say, we've never had somebody. Have we had people play Survivor New York in a polo before, or was Jack the first one? I feel like
No, it was Alex. It
Alex.
was Alex in his
Yeah.
blue polo.
so. Every year we got to get somebody to
Someone in a polo. I really did think when they were like, we need like a pink shirt and a blue shirt. I was like, I have these two like soft knit polos. Like maybe that's something where people will see like, oh, who's the guy who wore a polo? Like I'll underestimate him.
Yeah.
It was like a strategic wardrobe choice going into it. And
I
then
feel like in the All Stars, everyone has to wear the clothing they wore the first time they played. There's no exception. If they can't fit it, it doesn't matter. You have to wear it. The
Yeah.
shorts,
I still
the
have the
t-shirt.
pink polo. The blue polo is no longer with us. I got into like that's my unlucky polo. I got into a different accident and bled all over it. And so that shirt's no longer with us.
Oh,
but...
no.
Oh my god. Well, I have to say, Jack, that if you didn't already have like Cochrane comparisons. Wearing a polo shirt certainly didn't help, I think. In this
It's fine. If people want to cockganize me, that's fine. He won
Yeah.
in his second go.
Well, I just want to say, Christen, thank you for being here. I miss you. I'm so glad. I know I'll see you soon, but like, thank you for being here. I always love your insights. And Christen on season 5 is going to be a hoot. Everybody's going to tune in.
Oh, I
But
can't
thank
wait.
you for being with us, Christen, and thanks for watching all season. Like, you've been such a dedicated viewer, and I really appreciate
Yeah.
that about you.
I love this cast so much. Like every single one of you. If you're watching, like I'm such a big fan of you. Like this is my fangirl moment right now. Like I love you all. But it was so great to be here, especially like with you, Jack. I really liked your game, and it was so cool to hear your insight. I actually learned so many things I didn't know. So
Yeah. Well, I was happy to have you here. Pleasure to have you on.
Sounds like we're producing a killer podcast episode. And I just want to say, Jack and I did an episode of my podcast called Mike White with Rob, and it's really, really funny. But we're talking about Edge of Extinction more, and I think people should go listen to that because it's a hoot. But Chris, we will be back on Tuesday, right before the Survivor premiere, to talk with Miss Emily Paddock about her Survivor New York 4 win. So tune in 9 p.m. on Tuesday for that conversation with Alex Forsenhauser as our guest as well. And
Yay.
everybody else, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube
I'm
channel.
laughing so hard that you made the me comment thing again. I got that was good.
You can tune in. First of all, we have a trailer for season 5 that dropped on our YouTube channel. But also, we have amazing podcasts that we'll be doing all season. So please tune into those. But Chris, I can't wait for season 5 to come out. I'm really excited about it, and I hope that everybody will tune in.
I'm so excited
Can
for
you
just
hurry and edit that?
next
I
year.
can't wait either.
Okay, I just needed
You
a
won't have to
mental
wait 2
break,
years,
y'all.
hopefully.
I needed a
Well, you won't
mental
have to wait
break. Maybe you do. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it
2000
might be 2 years.
2022 is gonna be a fun year too. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of fun stuff. Right,
All
Naomi?
right, guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, everybody,
Seriously,
for
thank
watching.
you.
I'll see you